arrangements in the classes, and something about the size of the track we're on as well. So this is something that comes to light during the war. Now, I'm commanding general of all our forces for the last year of the war. And in that time, we had done our fair job to tear apart the Confederate track. Before the war started, there were over 9,000 miles of track in the United States, north and south. A third of that was in the south itself. But all of that track in the south, there wasn't more than 20 or 30 miles of it that was the same gauge. So you can imagine, we're on what's called standard gauge track, 56 1/2 inches across. A lot of railroads in the south, to save money on the length of their ties, they would reduce that to a narrow gauge. And most of the railroads would run 10 or 15 miles on a different gauge. Now, when we get to the other end, and you have to get on a different size track, that means everything has to get off this train. Your luggage, everything you brought with you has to be loaded on. It can't just hook onto another locomotive and pull the same cars. So as the country's growing, that's a bit of a problem. That's one reason Lincoln says we need to make a railroad go across and be the same gauge so it can run continuously. So as we're rebuilding in the South, we're building much of it to the standard gauge to use. Something you might find interesting to jump into your time period. The rockets of your time that you launch into space, none of them are wider than 56 1/2 inches because they had to fit on rails. So the whole influence of this design, we can actually thank the Romans for that. Roman chariots ran their wheelbase at 56 1/2 inches. So as they rutted into the ground and created roads in Europe, all the carts had to be that way so they wouldn't wobble out of the ruts. So when British engineers were building railroads, they built them using the current wagons of the time, which had that same wheelbase. So that's the influence there. So we can thank the Romans and the British for having what we do as far as standard gauge. Now down the line, Roosevelt comes along. I don't know if you know much about his career of breaking trusts and scandalous business interests, but he takes some pride in that as well.
Well, after the American Civil War, railroad spread west. The nation has spread from into the Western Territories. I spent a great deal of my time in the Dakota Territory, which is now in your time North Dakota. It is that state that you kind of go through and go over in your big long sky thing and look down and ignore. But the railroad is what's important. As it spread west, towns spread up. And that is how it started. These towns were horrific. Well, very difficult places to live. And some of them were actually illegal. And some of one of the famous ones for the mining towns is Deadwood. And I have spent some time there as well. The problem is, as they spread out, all these other little railroads started springing up. Had their own presidents, had their own band, stuff like this. Well, a gentleman of my acquaintance named J.P. Morgan, you may have heard of him. He's the only man in the world that has actually money named after him. Well, this pirate, this modern-day pirate, put together what they call trusts. Now, there are several billionaires and millionaires in the United States in my time. And what they would do is they would buy railroads. And they would put them all together into these massive organizations called trusts. And they will charge whatever they want. Charge you whatever they want. Can you imagine something like that? Charging you whatever they want? Sounds like something that even the government wouldn't do. Right? Well, I mean, after all, you know that you don't have to purchase anything from the government unless, and they won't fine you for it. Right?
Mr. Roosevelt?
Yes!
Can anybody tell me how you know how fast a steam locomotive might be able to go without seeing it actually go? Can you look at it and possibly guesstimate how fast it can go? Do you know how to do that? Anybody want to wager a guess? The diameter of the drive wheels, yes. So for every inch of the diameter, that's 1 mile/hour of speed. So if it has 40-inch drivers, you can go 40 miles an hour with it, or just a little better. So our locomotive today has about 45-inch drive wheels, but she's a freight engine, and she can probably go up to about 45. Presidential trivia. All bearded presidents in our history have been Republicans. The first Republican to run for office was John C. Fremont. Lincoln is the first elected Republican. He's also the first re-elected Republican. I'm the second elected and re-elected, and the first to complete 2 terms. So like I said, for trivia's sake, every president with a beard has been a Republican. So if you're ever asked...
Well, I was the only member of Congress to vote for allowing women to vote. This
That's true. When the vote was tallied for freeing the slaves, there wasn't one Democrat in Congress that voted for that. And the 15th Amendment as well, which gave them, the freed slaves, the right to vote, there wasn't one Democrat in Congress that voted for that. So we have always been known as the party of the rights of the individual. And in my first inaugural address, I laid it right out about the Freedmen's Bureau being a priority, as well as the Bureau of Indian Affairs, to clean that up and welcome the Indians into the citizenry of the United States if they wanted to. We're coming in, so once the train stops, collect up all your belongings, exit to the station side. Don't try to go the other side because the locomotive is going to come along the other track. So for your safety, exit to the station side. We do appreciate you coming. We're going to be outside the car if you'd like to talk to us a little further. And come back throughout the year. Check